Though I Am an Inept Villainess, tale of the butterfly rat body swap in a Maiden court, is a light novel series about a spiteful villainess swapping bodies with her noble and fragile protagonist, Raiden. Honestly, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm just going to butcher the name. This review only covers the first volume because that is all that is out. But I think the fact I've decided to review it with only one volume out should be enough of a recommendation. Because it was great. I was fairly cautious when I began reading because I'm not all that fond of body swap stories. They just don't do much for me. I tend to find a lot of the wacky, convoluted scenarios that come from them to be more obnoxious than fun. I can't really explain why, but I think the fact my cousins forced me to watch Freaky Friday a ridiculous number of times when I was a kid had something to do with it. And none of that is an issue with this series though, because Inept Villainess uses the body swap premise as a launching point for typical villainous turned good shenanigans, which I do enjoy a whole lot more. If I was to point out what makes the series so good, there would be two immediate points that come to mind. The first would be the masterful execution of the body swap premise. Body swap stories are about two characters dealing with abrupt shifts in perspectives and environments. This would have been an issue for Inept Villainess, since the villainess that body swaps is legit just an awful, spiteful person, and I don't think looking at things from her perspective would have been much fun. Thankfully, or regretfully, Raiden's original body is so sickly, the villainess basically spends most of this huge book slowly dying, which in turn means the only person we spend time with is the refined, delicate, and sickly Raiden. Except she isn't exactly those first two things. Yeah, by far the most pleasant surprise of this story is that our protagonist actually falls into the legendary and much acclaimed category of completely unhinged female protagonists. We quickly find out she only gave the impression of a calm and fragile girl because she had a fever basically all 7 days of the week. And so when she gets a healthy and strong new body, a lifetime's worth of pent-up energy is released. She starts small, doing quirky things like catching rats, farming, eating fried potatoes for all 3 meals of the day, pulling consecutive all-nighters to make some dresses, and practicing high-intensity dancing, but she also does some off-kilter stuff like facing down and accidentally poisoning a lion, and shredding her hand to tatters by drawing a bowstring with no proper protective equipment for more than 6 hours. Her being this numb to extreme stunts isn't unrealistic either, because she was so sickly and on the verge of dying every day, she basically has no fear of anything anymore. So Raiden is fun to observe because some of the supposed cliches about her weren't true, right? But what about the cliches that are true, like the fact she is a sickly and very kind girl? Well, those cliches are not wrong, but are taken to such extremes that they honestly become cartoonish. Like, yes, she was sickly, but she was so sickly she literally catched a fever with a slight drop in temperature, or by talking a little more than usual. Same with her being a kind girl. Yes, she's kind, but she's kind to a pretty unrealistic degree, forgiving the villainess almost immediately, and even wanting her plan to succeed because, she put a lot of effort into it, I guess. So while you might feel some empathy for her, it's also just really funny. Raiden does just fall into the very niche section of light novels, which I and many other people love, of girls get it done, but they get it done in very unconventional ways, heedless of the consequences. But Raiden isn't all that's good about the series. There's also a pleasant twist in the body swap premise, because a whole lot of people notice pretty quickly that the supposed sewer rat of a villainess is basically nothing like she used to be, which means we don't spend much time with the protagonist tediously trying to figure out how to tell people she isn't her. It's not like everyone immediately knows who she is, but lots of people do wonder if she's just like gone insane or something, which is a lot more amusing than most characters just being clueless of the change. The second biggest standout of the series are the characters, because Raiden is stuck inside the body of someone who everybody hates. That means most people are constantly hostile towards her. What's interesting about that is the spite people throw at her can be cleanly divided into justified spite from people she has wronged, and unjustified spite from people that know they won't get into trouble if they do mean stuff to her. So even though everybody is constantly trying to dunk on her, you still have a clear line of empathy that is drawn from the get-go. And because this story is basically about how it really is what's on the inside that counts, wink wink, that means the people the villain is wronged become all the more empathetic when Raiden manages to mend her relationship with them. It was just funny seeing people call the supposed villainess all sorts of vile shit because it made you think, well, clearly you're not much better. The dynamic of figuring out who is a good person that was wronged as opposed to a shit person simply being shitty was definitely a lot of fun and made characters that would otherwise be obnoxious and one-dimensional a bit more amusing to observe. I would like to reiterate that this is all just in the first volume, but this is such a strong foundation that I don't really see any of these strong points vanishing completely in future volumes. It's a played out premise that gets a refreshing and creative twist by inserting it into the villainous light novel landscape. I say give this a read if you love your strong female protagonist, if you love stories of underdogs turning the odds in their favors, if you love villainous shenanigans, and if you love Mao Mao from Apothecary Diaries and Mine from Ascendance of a Bookworm. Recommended if you can't stand any other body swap stories because of deeply repressed childhood trauma.